a little over a decade ago, I was in the middle of negotiations for a multi-million-dollar business at a multinational corporation. Had several business partners doing the work, had my executives involved. It was really it was a nice sized deal. And I've talked about my past in the technology industry, and as a sales guy, and what I had to do in order to bring sales in. I was working with a specific technology partner on the deal, and there was some real intricacies there, and there was a lot of politics going on. And when you're talking about millions of dollars in sales, a lot of egos get involved, and bad things can go sideways. And as I was negotiating this deal, I had a business partner who did a really, really great job. Uh, and my company at the time was getting a little kind of weird about the sale. And what I had to do was make all the parties happy. I had to work to keep my partners involved. I had to work to keep my executives involved. I had to work to keep the customer involved to bring the sale to fruition. On the other side of the aisle with my partners was a vice president of sales who was such a good partner of mine and worked so well with me. Years later, after a bunch of disputes and stuff to bring the sale in, told me that he really appreciated the integrity that I brought to the sale, and for me fighting for his sales guy and for their involvement. And that really helped me deal with my past in the technology industry and learn who I was, which actually led to me being a coach. This story it really has done more for my self-esteem and my history than my next guest actually knows. So my next guest is the vice president of sales for Alliance Technology Group, a North American systems integrator. They're huge, man. They work in cybersecurity, they work in infrastructure, they work in storage and systems and networking, and they just do incredible work. And a bunch of their salespeople were friends of mine and mentors of mine. And Steve Jermyn, who is going to be joining us, was that vice president who really gave a boost to me and who I was in the industry. And I'm so grateful for him that now I want to share him with you on our podcast. Steve, thanks for being here.
Hey, Mark, how are you, buddy? That's a great story. I've often told many people that story. And I do have to remind you that my mom always said, when someone calls you Steve, make sure you remind them to call you Steven. Because
I know you're Steven. That sucks so bad. I'm so sad that I did that. I know you're Steven. I've been calling you Steven. But like that story, I actually ruined that story. There were stories a lot more dramatic than that. But the impact, what I love about that is the impact that you don't know you have on other people, and you don't know the impact that you had on me just, when you told me how you felt about that. Like I have held that as part of who I am for the rest of my life. And so we both had like this impact, and it really, and it built a friendship over the years, even though our lives do not cross.
No, and then the most amazing thing of that story is was only recently at the time at Alliance, and we were really growing. We were a company of only about 30 or so people. It was a large deal. It was very significant to us, and you could have easily done what a lot of people do, which is, act like water, the path of least resistance, and you didn't, and you stood up for us. And to me, that is a huge factor in the people that I would always surround myself with, and I put in my life, because integrity matters. And it matters when pressure is on. It matters when it matters, not just some kind of BS statement people use or say, I am this. It matters when people are giving you heat and you stand up over time. And I've always appreciated you for that.
Thank you. So the reason these are my favorite episodes on the podcast because you don't have an agenda, you don't have a book to sell, you don't have a product to sell on the podcast. You're in really good shape, middle-aged guy, right? Who has been in the competitive world of technology sales for decades now. You're raising 4 children. You coach them in every sport, right? You're like every man. Basically, and you're all of us trying to figure out how to navigate having elderly parents, raising your family, keeping competitive in a very competitive career, and then balancing legacy there. So just having a conversation with you, I think, is so valuable. I'm going to open it up with, we're in the middle of the, so podcasts are evergreen, so people will listen to this for years to come. But right now we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic 2020, and we're about 4 or 5 months in. And you run large teams of people. How are your people doing now? You run salespeople who have to go out and be around people.
Yeah, we're doing great. What's amazing is that I'm planning a mid-year brief. We usually do our national sales meeting, which you used to be a part of, and we can't do that. So we're doing a mid-year brief, kind of get through the first 2 quarters of our year, and we're going to virtually sit down with everybody and talk about some new technology, but really communicate back to everybody how we're doing. So I've reconnected with a few of my motivational speaker friends, Jim Craig being one of them, the U.S. Olympic goalie from 1980. And I just wrote him an email and kind of gave him some bullet points. And at the end of the day, what we did was when things got ugly in early March, we had a few days of those bad moments, right? And then we quickly decided that, hey, as a leadership team, this is what we need to do. First, reach out to our customers, communicate, ask them how they're doing, to embrace working virtually, just like this. I know you don't like it. I know you're not comfortable. I don't care. Okay, get over it. There's a great Navy SEAL term called embrace the suck, which means every day you have to do, if you're going to be great in life, every day you have to do something that's really hard. And they use the term embrace the suck. So I did that with my people and said, look, we've just got to get good at this. We've got to get back to the basics. We've got to get back to selling, and making cold calls. And, we went deep on learning new technologies so we could have better conversations and interesting conversations with our customers. And we just were relentless. And then at the same time, I knew that there was importance of doing this, seeing each other. So every week we either have a team meeting or small team meetings, or I have team meetings that bring special guests in. I have this Thursday, our team meeting has 3 of our admin people on to process our orders. They're our special guests. Where some of my reps talk to them every day via email or the phone, but seeing each other, face to face,
even
virtually, it matters. So I think we've just tried to be creative, work hard, because nothing ever changes that, or that'll always be the formula to success. And then just stayed positive and said, look, we will fight our way through this, and our numbers are great.
Right, against all odds, with everything that's going on, fighting through it, you found creative ways of doing what you used to do.
Yeah, and I think the other part, what's amazing is we are doing some work around Fever Cam and social distancing software and some things like that, but that's not what's driving our growth. Our growth is just our good old everyday business, and I think maybe we're just kind of out positioning or just adjusting to it and just moving forward and saying this is the new for now.
You guys have always been pretty nimble. I can't let that go by though. What's Fever Cam?
Fever Cam is, we have 3 different offerings. You walk up, you stop. It goes to your inner catheter, does a temperature reading, and you either are green or red, and you either go in the school or the campus or the business or whatever it is.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
I can see a whole new market. So, and on earlier podcasts, we talked about the 3 stages of a crisis: chaos, the new normal. Chaos, acceptance, and then the new normal. And what we thought was going to happen is, in about 3-4 months, we were going to be coming out of this to whatever the new normal is going to be. And we're not coming out of this as fast as we want to. It's still, the chaos is still here with us, even though we're now tired. We're fatigued from everything that we've dealt with. Everybody's got some history. What are you doing with your team and your people? Their emotions, their childcare, everything that they have to do when the uncertainty is still there. We thought we were going to open up in September, and it may not be that way.
Yeah, Mark, you've known me. I sometimes can bring a little intensity to things. So it's actually interesting that what we first did was stop the chaos. Don't hide underneath your table, right? Get out and call customers and get in front of them, right? Virtually. And then, and we've been doing that. And now what's interesting is the conversation I've been having with my people everywhere for the past 2 weeks is, tell me about your vacation. Because guess what? This is going to go until spring. We have got to get in the mindset and get ourselves to spring. So I want you to tell me what your vacation plans are. Where are you going? What are you doing with the kids? And I've had this conversation with dozens and dozens of my people, and I'm making them explain in detail to me what they're doing, because I think you need to unplug. I think we are running hard, and at the same time, you have to pull back every once in a while and say, okay, I need to kind of refresh.
Thank you. I'm begging all of my leaders to have those types of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important. It
I
really
think it
is.
is. I mean, I want my people working their ass off every day, but I also respect the fact that you have got to, pull back, recharge the batteries. And at the same time, I think I've asked everyone, look, I don't care what hours you work. I just need you to work the hours. In the middle of the day, if you need to take your son or daughter for a walk and go get air, go do it. That's fine with me. Like, in fact, I'd encourage it. I think there's, with all the confinement, going out and doing something, or going and playing some kind of video game with your kid for a little while. Like, I just think you need to do that. When you're working from home, you have got to be respectful of your children, your spouse, and just make sure that it works somehow, and the work gets done, but you also create environment that is, okay to work in.
Hmm. How are your kids doing? Because you have a 10-year-old and all the way up to college age, and how are they doing with the uncertainty?
They're good. They're good. We talk as a family a lot, just about, look, this is, we talked a lot about that my parents lived through the Great Depression, and that this is like that kind of an event for you. You will always remember this. And my children are doing well. They're all working or interviewing, or one's in college. So she's going back to school as a sophomore. So she's excited about that. I
So
have a 10-year-old.
is she going to be in classes, or is she going back to school and then
No,
work and then be virtual though?
it's virtual. So, but at least she's there.
Mm-hmm.
So she's excited about that, and hopefully we'll see if that changes. Then my two oldest twins, they both, one's interviewing, one's down in Houston. So they're they've been affected by it. She was laid off, because of some things with their company. And then when the virus hit, it was a small company and they just couldn't make it through it. So that's been hard on her, but she's back interviewing. She had a great interview yesterday. So it's our family's been through a lot, right? And it's all good. And my littlest one, she's 10 and she's just trying to understand it, and trying to figure out. I mean, we're back to letting her play with friends and things like that. But boy, for months she would sit on one trampoline, her little buddy would sit in the I swear to God, she'd be on her trampoline, her buddy be on a trampoline in the next door, and they would bounce and have fun. But that's as close as we would let them get to each other. But that's crazy for a little kid to live that way, so.
What are you doing that's working? What do you think with your family? What do you think that you're doing that's working?
Just communicating, talking, a lot of hugs, and, all the things, but it's hard. When we had everybody, our son just recently moved, we brought him back to live in the house when it first hit in March. And then he just went back to Houston a month or so ago. But when we had everybody in the house and people are trying to work and communicate and do all, it was hard. I mean, we had some battles. But like anything, first of all, I'm married to an awesome woman, and she's just great in terms of how she sees our family and the standards she sets for us. And, so a lot of love, a lot of hugs, some tears here and there, some confusion, trying to work through that, make sure everybody understands where we're at. And then also a little bit of this pullback of, hey, this is a pretty unique thing. Like, this probably will never come around again in your life. Take some stock in it, write some notes. Someday you could write yourself some notes and show your kids of what it was like to live, because they're going to ask at some point.
What do you take? So I'm going to go back to business again.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you guys are taking out of this that you're going to keep? Like, what was unexpected about this challenge that gave you some new things to bring into the future?
Well, I think, look, we need to embrace this virtual technology more than we did, and to not be fearful of it, right? Like, I think in some ways, in our business, I always think what we sell is very technical. What we do is very simple. We meet with people in normal times. We shake hands. We look people in the eye. We sit in conference rooms. We whiteboard technical solutions, and we work through, supporting our customers that way. That's changing. Today it is. I think there'll be a day we get back to that, and I will always want to get back to that. But in between, it's all right to do this kind of meeting. It works. It's weird. You could have kids running around in the background or dogs barking or all kinds of things. It's just, that's what we're
It's
all
become the
dealing with
new
that.
norm. Like people are
It
okay
is.
with it. Like, we
It
get
is.
it.
So that's right. So it just is what it is. So just don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Right. And I think we're going to continue to spend time that we have forgotten, that we have got to dedicate a little time each week to just cold calling and trying to get into new accounts. And there's a little bit of a skill set to it that I think we had forgotten. So we went through some training, and
your organization, one of the things I love about your organization is you have decades long relationships.
Yeah.
Like your people go deep and long and really care about the people that they work with. And they're so loyal. So I can see that as a challenge to opening up.
Yeah. And look, I think, I think business is always going to be about people and being in front and just working harder than your competition, right? And you got to be smart. And we've done some really smart things. We've invested a lot in the engineering side of us, and what we bring to the table these days when we see customers from an engineering strength. I think compared to other partners we're really strong. I think we really shine when we can get our people on and they talk about their experience and the work they've done previously for customers to help them. I think customers trust us, and I think that's a big factor.
It's so essential. Sales is so much of that. But let's switch now to personal. Just so we were talking before we turned on the recording. We were both talking about our injuries. Being people who like athletics, like being in shape, like participating in thing. And you've got a blown knee, right? And my shoulder hurts, and I'm 58, you're 53, and but we're still competitive. Like we still want to be in the game.
Yes.
Like talk about mindset about being an old dog in the game and still wanting to be competitive, but having to deal with all the setbacks.
Well, I think setbacks are part of sports, right? And I think look, there's parts of us physically that I am not 23 anymore, and I realize that now. If I'm in a competitive situation,
but up until our 40s, we could make believe we were in our 20s.
Well, for me, I look at, I just said that just a year or so ago, right? That I could go out and do things, and in some ways I could, depending on the sport. I just think that I think you just have to adjust over time. You have to settle into that. I think there's a lot of great aging athletes. I think if you actually could see Michael Jordan play basketball right now, he'd be pretty good. He still could play. I don't think he could play every day.
He still ices knees when he's done and takes some Advil
right?
before he went home.
Exactly. But I think, and that's the mark of, I think just how a brain works, right? If you're a competitive person, and that's your spirit and your passion and what your enthusiasm is around. So you adjust, you take on new challenges, you find new things. I've always done that. I took up lacrosse at the age of 40. I took up swimming at the age of 47. I was horrible. I mean, I could swim 4 laps, and I worked myself up to doing over a mile. You just have to find new avenues and new challenges. That's what works for me, at least.
What do you think you do differently at work, being a 53-year-old guy versus being a 43-year-old or 30-year-old? What do you do different at work as a leader, as a person who is like surrounded by vibrancy and new and the energy in the technology industry? How do you keep yourself viable?
Well, I think learning. I think I've started tapping into this whole motivational speaking piece of it, and just learning, right? Learning to be a better leader. And as I've gone down this motivational, it really starts with I started doing national sales meetings here 5 or 6 years ago, because I just thought as our company grew, we really need to make sure we're all on the same page, and every oar's in the water at the same time, moving in the right direction.
You lead a sales team, so your natural world has to be motivating and inspiring, and enrolling a group of people to row in a direction.
Correct. And as I thought about doing that, and I thought, okay, the other thing to do is bring in motivational speakers. I was very specific about who I went after, and have now created some really great friendships from that. And they're incredibly inspiring people that I've got to know. So that's its own energy that has helped me, in a passion that I've been fiddling around with on the side. So that keeps me going. And look, I have all the stresses and pressures of paying for colleges, and I do want to retire someday. I don't think soon, but, and when I have a
Well, you
10-year-old in
got
my
four,
life,
four
guess
kids
what?
to get through college, right? Yeah.
Right. I got 3 of them through. So, or on my way to get 3 done. So, so that fuels me, and I want to give back to them what I was given by my parents. So that's important to me. And look, heck, 53, 43, 33 mark, I give a crap what the number is, right? I mean, I don't feel it. I mean, I feel it when my knee is bothering me or something, but I just, my mindset's still, I'm that young kid just trying to make it in life, right? I'm from a small town. I'm just trying to grind my way through life.
What do we've actually talked about this. What makes you one a little bit unique to me is kind of your acceptance of life and the way you have simplified things. What do you think your mindsets are that you're not in the middle of a midlife crisis, that you haven't divorced your wife, right, and gone and found a 20-year-old? Like, what do you think you've done leading up to now that has had you be so in the pocket as family man and businessman? And
Well, I think it's a combination of things. So first of all, probably my belief in God, right? That's important. Two, I just think my priority, is family first. It's a Coveyism that I grabbed onto years ago that I really believe in. Um, Mark, I'm just so damn busy, right? I don't have time I just don't have time for some of the silliness. And I think some of that silliness is selfishness, right? And if you have children and you put your family first, look, do I want to go? I started waking up to swim at 5:15 in the morning. How come? One, because the pool wasn't busy. Two, because my family's asleep, right? So I can get my workouts in, and I'm not disrupting anything with my family or
ever
missing
since my kids
family
are born,
time.
my workout is always before crack of dawn,
Right.
before anybody wakes up.
It works for me. So I think, if you kind of have your priorities right, I watched my father work, just extraordinarily hard. Um, and that's embedded inside of me. So to me, like if I would have, my father unfortunately passed away 3 years ago. If I'd asked my dad, "Hey Dad, how come you didn't have a midlife crisis?" He'd have wanted to cold cock me in the face. What do you mean midlife crisis?
Who has time for a midlife
Right.
crisis?
Who has time for that shit is what he probably would have said. Um, and there's some interesting thoughts around that I don't, I think people do go through things, and I'm not saying my life has been super easy. It hasn't been, but I just don't think you give into that. I think you have to be strong will, strong mind, and at the same time realize, as they say, tomorrow is a promise to no one.
Mm-hmm. Tell me what does God give you that keeps you grounded?
Just knowing that there's someone out there to reach to, knowing that you're accountable to someone else other than your family. I think God, I was raised Christian as a little kid, so I went through Catholic school all the way through 8th grade. I just think it gives you a foundation. And when times are hard, you obviously reach to your friends and family, but then this other power is out there that, accepts you. And I think of that saying about, footprints in the sand.
Mm.
The 2 footprints are walking, and then all of a sudden one's gone, and the story plays itself out that he was actually carrying you at that time, and you thought he had abandoned you, and that's not how God is. So, that's powerful to me.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering the question, because I think some semblance of spiritual connection is just essential to make it through COVID, to make it through a career, to raise, to
Right.
everything, to something bigger than the life that we can, that seems to be so immediate. I think that's really cool. You were talking about dabbling in motivational speaking, and you're speaking to groups of young people. Let's talk about legacy. Let's, now that you're starting to go into that third act, the second and third act, what are you thinking about for the future for yourself?
Well, I think for myself, I've always been, I was incredibly fortunate to play college basketball. And I played for this just great guy who taught me all kinds of things beyond basketball. And I've always had a mentality of trying to give back, which is one of the reasons I coach. Um, I think legacy for me is thinking about doing some motivational speaking outside of Alliance, along with something I've kidded you about for years, that I have a book running around in my head called Life 101, that all these things that I've been able to teach my children, that I feel bad if there are kids out there that don't have to learn these lessons. And as I do 4 times a year, I bring in about 80 high school students. They're part of the Howard County Cyber Program. And they're great kids. They're smart kids. I mean, they're so much smarter than I ever was at their age. But teaching them certain things about kind of the industry is important. Teach them a little bit about Alliance. Talk about the work we do in the cybersecurity space. But then also kind of I have a whole section on building their brand, which is talking to them about interviewing. And it starts with really simple things. And like one of the first slides is I put up, what is this? Which is a thesaurus. And what that is teaching them how to shake a hand properly. Every kid that comes in, I do this. And then I put that big slide up to teach them, that look, at God gave you this little spot right here for one reason, to get in there.
Steve's pointing to the part of his hand that's between his thumb and his forefinger. So we just wanted to give the visual there.
Yeah, thank you. And but teaching young kids how to shake a hand and have eye contact and all these things, and teaching them to build their brand, to get ready to go to college, and watching the social media, and the great quote of show me your friends and I'll show you your future. There's all these things I think young people
show me your friends and show you. My son changed his friends in high school.
Mm-hmm.
He was hanging, he was the potheads, and
Mm-hmm.
in the senior year of high school, he's like, I need new friends. I need to do something different, and change the trajectory of his life.
Right.
Yep. Totally agree.
It does. I mean, there's the outstanding John Wooden quote: "You'll never outgrow your inner circle." And and the beauty of where I am, and the teachers are always in the back, and so the great part is I stand up and I tell the kids, look, if you hang out with losers, you're going to become a loser. It's a simple formula. You can see kids older than you, because most of these kids are sophomores and juniors, that have kind of started to wreck their life because of who they hang out with. So, talking about things like that, teaching kids about finance, right? Or tell me about a credit card, explain how a credit card works. It's amazing the answers you get back. And so many young people get themselves into financial trouble that way.
So we're going to sell 1,000 of those books right now, right here on this conversation. We have 40,000 followers on this podcast.
Okay.
So, you're talking about this book. I wanted this book when my kids were in high school when you started talking about this book. My son graduated college and is engaged. And I wanted this book because I wanted to hand this book to them because I thought it was such a brilliant idea. And I talked to so many people who have these gifts in them, and they're too busy raising their kids. They're too busy running their companies to actually birth these things, to put attention on these things. Like you said, to give yourself some time, you get up at the dark 100 so that you can go swim and go exercise. How are we going to get you and people like you to put these things that are on the back burner on the front burner and not wait until that third act?
Well, I think I have 2 things I'm mentally working on: the book that we just talked about, and then also the motivational speaking. I've actually taken some steps on the motivational speaking. I've been communicating with another motivational speaker that I met randomly, if you will. So I have some thoughts. I put some ideas around that, and actually down on paper, which is always the first step in it. So I'm fiddling around with that one now. The challenge of motivational speaking during COVID is, I'm
actually working. One of my clients is launching his speaking career, and we have we're doing a video reel of him doing virtual workshops and workshop presentations. I've myself have learned. I've got I'm buying a new camera. I've got software so that makes my workshops that are online more dynamic. So it's actually, people are now pivoting to this, so it can still be done.
Right. It can be, yeah. And so I'm working on it. I'm trying to carve out some time to work on these ideas. So, but look at, we all have our free moments in a day that you get to think about the fun things you want to do. And, these are things that motivate me and kind of get my juices fired up.
Cool. All right, so let's. What little drop of wisdom would you like to leave everybody with? By the way, thank you for this conversation, because this is part of your motivational speaking. This is part of creating your legacy. Is just sharing what it's like to be you.
Mhm.
because that's like the most interesting thing in the world to me, is finding out who people are, what their life has been like, and how do they get to be where they are at the moment that we have this conversation. So I really appreciate you being candid about that. What would you want people to leave this conversation with?
Well, I think from a personal standpoint, the family is the most important thing, and your friends. I think if you surround yourself with great people, and look, life is hard, right? It is, but you have to put laughter into every day. You have to find fun in things, and sometimes you got to embrace the suck, and you know what? You got to use it to motivate you. And if you're going to be great and you're going to do a good job, you have to do the hard things in a marriage, in raising children, in your own goals personally, right? You just do. Um, and then, second, from a business perspective, from a leadership perspective, I think I think you have to learn and study how to lead people correctly, because you can't lead a group of people all the same. You have to tailor it sometimes to individual people, but you got to spend time. And there's so much good information out there on leadership. And if you have it and it's inside you, you gotta fuel that fire. And when you're excited about something, it's just like sports. And my wife kids me that I relate too many things to sports, but I think it's true. If you're excited and you bring passion and enthusiasm and perseverance, it's infectious.
I think a guest of mine on this podcast and now a new friend, Alan Stein, wrote a book called Raise Your Game. And it's
Hmm.
everything he learned about coaching college sports
Hmm.
in the business world. It's really, really, really good book.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing everything. I really appreciate it. I will retroactively put the link to your book in the show notes whenever it comes out, so people can find it. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate Mark. I appreciate you. Thank you.
To everybody else, I just appreciate your time and attention. If you like the show, please share it. Please rate it, only if you're going to rate it good. And have a great rest of the day. I love you guys.